here we go. All right, it's okay. We're gonna end and yeah. Okay. Start webinar. This video is private. Okay. Go to home. Watch history is off. Give me a break. Okay. Let me make sure this is recording locally. Just triple check. Automatic. Okay, good. Okay. Let me see if I can. Okay, let's try to live stream. Can you get in?
Hey, Brian's here as a guest. You should probably be able to promote him.
Brant's I can't promote him to host because he's not in the Chia. No, he doesn't have a Chia.
Oh, right.
Oh God, now people are here. Okay. Okay.
Hello, everybody.
Hey,
Thanks for
everybody,
joining us
we're
today.
going to start very soon. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Mahai. Hi, Yulin. How are you? Okay. We're just going to start a little bit. We're just going to wait for Brian to join us. We're having some fun technical issues.
Yeah, it looks like he is in here as a guest.
I made him a panelist. Okay. Let me edit it again. He shouldn't be here as a guest. Okay. He's here as a panelist. I'll do it again. He should have it. He should have it. All right, he's going to try logging back in again.
Sorry, everybody, for the technical difficulties. It's we haven't done a whole lot of these, so we're still figuring out the patterns. But we endeavor to do better every time, take notes and run postmortems. So we'll get this figured out, get Brian in here, and then we can get started. Again, thanks everybody for coming. It's really nice to spend some time with the community today. There was some of you guys have some pretty crazy questions. I'm excited to answer those. Quick note while we have dead air here, the Time Lords, if you guys are part of the Time Lord program, those are going to be going out Monday. We plan to go and to go to the location. We have the lion's share, the Time Lords stored, packaging them up, send them out. I'm setting up shipping labels and paying postage and stuff today. If you're an international recipient, you'll be getting it probably a little slower than the American or North American participants. And that's just basically from customs. But your price that you've paid covers your shipping and your customs fees and all that. We've got everything taken care of. And as long as things go well with the import people in your country, things should be smooth on our end. And obviously reach out and let us know if that stuff doesn't work out for you. Happy to assist whatever way we can. Getting these in the hands of the community is kind of number one priority for us. So
If not, I'm gonna have to generate a new one. Okay.
All right, Brian should be up as a panelist now.
there we go. Thank you so much.
Yay!
I
All
added him
right.
twice. I don't get it.
Excellent. We made it.
Yeah,
Where are you?
Zoom,
There he
Zoom
is.
sometimes does not agree. You know, that's
All
Someone
right.
asked, were the Time Lord shipped in Chia themed TARDIS shaped boxes?
no, the packaging is not like super duper fancy packaging like you would expect from like a MacBook or something like that. These are very beta. It is very crunchy. I mean, it's safe and secure and good packaging, but it's it's not gonna be anything super fancy, just packaging material and then a anti-static bag and an instruction QR. Actually, I can show you what they come in. 1 second. So this is the box that they are going to come in, and then I've shown the Time Lord like 100 times. So
They're tiny.
yeah, I mean, they're like the size of a deck of cards. It's crazy how little these things are for what they do for the network.
Absolutely.
Also,
All
a
right.
lot of people are thinking they're buying like an off-the-shelf piece of hardware. A lot of questions are being asked that I don't think we actually know the answer to because these are so new. I myself have only been running these for about 6 months or 8 months. We haven't been, running them for a super long time. We don't know a whole lot about them other than what we established in our initial testing period.
Well, you sound really clear, Justin, before we officially start. Am I clear too?
Yes, you are.
All right, good. All right.
It's my new headset. I got a nice new one that's little and you can't see it.
Yeah, that's cool. Who makes that?
Shocks? This is like they're like bone induction headphones.
Oh, wow.
And then like they make a headset that's Bluetooth, which not to like advertise for them, but it's pretty good stuff. They're a little pricey, but I like them. It's like a cheat code for ADHD because it like you can have music playing all the time, and then somehow that makes you able to like focus and do things.
That's cool. Is it just one ear or both?
It's both ears. It's like the actual speakers like sit on the bones at the top of your jaw, and then it vibrates like the little ears inside your or little bones inside your ear.
Wow. Fancy. I'm gonna look that up after the interview. All right, we ready to go? 10 o'clock?
I think so, yeah.
All right. Is anyone in the background there needing to be ready with a thumbs up for recording?
I think we're good to go. The recording and the stream should be running.
Okay, well, that was a rough start.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good morning, Justin. Good to see you here today. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm very excited to chat with you today.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to do this like AMA style, like we had with Mr. Chow. And let's start with your name and title at CNI.
Yeah, so I'm Justin England. There we go. Do you want to do the question again, Brian?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So let's start with your name and title at CNI.
Yeah, so I'm Justin England. For those of you who don't know, you probably have to be under a rock at this point. Pretty active in the community. My title is Vice President of Platform and Security here at Chia. And so I run DevOps, CI/CD, and then also the security portion of our blockchain and internal practice here at Chia.
And for those unfamiliar with some of those things you just rattled off, like what is DevOps and what is the other thing you said?
Yeah, absolutely. So DevOps is a culture of everyone participates in the building and releasing of code. In broader parlance, it's kind of taken on a term that implies certain kind of practices for releasing and Git management and using Git approvals and Git-based CI, which is continuous integration. That's the servers that run your tests and your builds and your releases. All that stuff kind of knits neatly together. And instead of having a guy who builds code locally and ships it out and that into a file server like they used to in the 90s, the last like 20 or 30 years of software development has kind of centralized around these core precepts of like CI/CD and DevOps and Git driven ops. Not everybody does that, but most shops I've worked in for probably the last 10 years have done that. And we at Chia, I think, do a really good job of this because as a startup, we kind of got to write our own destiny here. And from the very beginning, even before I got here, Gene had a strong culture of DevOps where everybody kind of contributed everywhere. It requires a certain type of engineer, but I think at the end, you get better quality software and better quality security and that kind of thing, because everybody's kind of a player coach. And then the security portion, I mean, we do internal security testing like phishing and stuff like you guys are probably used to at your jobs. We also do some red teaming stuff. We have a guy that we hired from the community who does just code and blockchain code level reviews of primitives and of the code we're releasing to ensure that we're not introducing security bugs into our smart contracts or other things we release into the ecosystem like the cat primitive and things like that. And then we also have a security component where we focus on the security of the node protocol, the security of the blockchain, the security of the consensus. We keep track of Nakamoto coefficient and all the things that kind of matter to blockchain security as opposed to traditional engineering or software security.
Okay. Wow. All right. So yeah, you know your stuff way more than me. And so what is your background and experience in computer security? Where'd you get the education?
Yeah, so I went to Penn State. I'm a state school kid. That was way longer ago than I'd like to admit, to be frank with you. I actually dropped out of school and founded my own company when I was a junior. We won a business plan competition and we got into like manufacturing automation and like helping. The area we were in was Eastern Pennsylvania, and so there were a lot of older manufacturing spot jobs and a lot of shipping managers and that sort of thing. So we helped them modernize their practice and process. That's how we kind of got our foot in the door making money. We quickly found out that there was this thing called Bitcoin that you could just turn computers on and it would make you free internet money, which was the coolest thing we had ever heard of. And so I read the Bitcoin white paper. I got like really lost in the sauce of like the original ideology of Bitcoin, and we heavily indexed into Bitcoin mining and contributing code and being like part of that ecosystem, doing security consulting for people in Bitcoin. I don't know if you were around at the very beginning of Bitcoin, but it was really wild. Like, and there were exchanges going down, empty GOX happened. Like it was like a whole different world, it feels like, even though it wasn't really that long ago. We're talking like 2008, 2009. And so that's kind of where I got my feet wet in the security of blockchains. And then I went and did the DevOps CI/CD thing for a long time, and was always very a security focused engineer. I think that to be a good DevOps, you have to kind of be a polyglot and understand things like software security and hardware and platform security. Just in the designs you put out, you've got to think about a lot of those things. And so I was at T-Mobile looking for something more fun, and that's how I heard about Chia. And I got in touch with Gene via a mutual friend. And was like, hey, I heard you're looking for a guy to take some stuff off your plate. I'm maybe interested. I'm maybe crazy enough to come work at a blockchain company. We had an interview. I asked Gene a trillion questions about the things that I didn't get, like time lords and proof of time and the stuff that wasn't Bitcoinish. And Gene blew me away. Like, I am still like the world's biggest Gene Hoffman fan. And I was like, still maybe on the fence because it seemed like a crazy idea to get into crypto. And so Gene was like, just come to it for a month. You'll probably like it. And that's how I got started here at Chia. And Gene slowly handed me everything he had been doing, which he was, head cook and bottle washer at the time. And so a lot of stuff they didn't have the bandwidth for just got handed to me. One of those being the security apparatus. And it's really funny. My first day, Gene was like, I need you to do these 30 security things. And I was like, all right, well, I did them like 5 years ago. What? Okay. And he was like, oh, all right, well, here's how you get started then. And so that like mutual, like, this is how you secure things was just already there at the beginning of my time with Chia, and just happened to match the exact things Gene was already doing. And so I feel like that was like a really great like kickstart the trust Gene and the company has in me to, make sure that things are the level of security that we need as a blockchain project.
Wow, cool. Let me rewind your story there. So you drop out in junior year of college, right, and start your own company. And right around that time is when Bitcoin starts out and you get really into it. Were you into the mining aspect of it or more just
yeah. So that was when one CPU was one vote, right? So we had the business plan competition we won that allowed us to start our company, we had free office space and free power. And so we just plugged in a bunch of free computers, turned them on as Bitcoin miners because one CPU could still mine at that time. And we made quite a bit of Bitcoin in the early days. It wasn't like a dragon's hoard, but it was certainly, it kept us in beer and French fries while we were running our startup, which is, we were like the most capitalized year-old startup that I have ever been a part of. That's for sure.
Wow. I hope you didn't buy too much pizza with that Bitcoin.
Oh, I mean, looking back now at what we spent Bitcoin on, because it was just magic internet money. Bitcoin hit 20,000 for the first time. And I was like, oh man, like I had like a little bit of an existential crisis about how much Bitcoin we had spent on silly things.
I
But
bet.
we also invested in hardware. We eventually pivoted into a makerspace. So I mean, I would not trade it for the world. It was an experience unlike any other, being able to, basically just goof around and run our own little like Pirates of Silicon Valley thing in Eastern Pennsylvania, funded by, coins that we got for free. It was a magical time. I really kind of miss it.
So you were into the mining. Did you pivot at some point from there into more of the blockchain development
Oh yeah.
aspects of it?
So we along with discovering that we could get Bitcoin from mining, we found that it was actually more lucrative to do security consulting. There were people that had hordes of Bitcoin and had no idea how to protect it. And so we were charging, 10% of whatever you want us to secure, and we'll walk you through like, how to do hardware wallets and how to, recommend stamping your keys out on metal, and we'll even come do that for you. And we'll pen test your Bitcoin casino website. We actually the biggest score we ever made was there was this Bitcoin casino website where it was like kind of like I don't know, like that thing we did our most recent meetup thing in, where you're like kind of in a little digital world and you can walk around to different carnival games, but they were gambling games then, and we found a few vulnerabilities in those games, and in testing exploited them and were able to get some Bitcoin. And then the guy was just like, well, I mean, I guess you guys can keep that as your bounty then. Thanks for telling me about the security concerns. So I think we made, I don't want to say a number, but I think we made like 500 or 600 Bitcoin on that one thing, testing the
Wow.
security of this thing. Well, we found a way, because you're betting, so like there's one win can be exponential, right? Like it wasn't like we were hitting it for hours at a time, but we were like, oh no, I think we should write this guy. We just stole all his Bitcoin. Luckily he was cool about it and kind of give it to us as a finder's fee. But so that was actually what got me into blockchain security, was realizing that, hey, wait a minute, there's like actual money to be made in this stuff, and maybe securing it's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Wow. Very cool. All right. So how did Gene end up finding you? Like, what
Yeah,
was the connection?
so Gene and I have some mutual friends in the larger tech space. As a person who's always been in security and crypto, I know people who knew Gene, and they were like, hey, I know Gene Hoffman's running this this Chia company that's doing a novel consensus. I know you've kind of taken a step back from your Bitcoin advocacy because of the direction of the project. I am not a huge fan of ASIC driven consensus. I'm not a huge fan of one power plant, one vote. I think that is very much antithetical to what Satoshi initially wanted. And it's economies are economies, so they will do what they want. I just didn't feel like that felt right for me to participate in anymore. And so people knew that about me, and so they kind of knew that this, the message of Chia might actually speak to my values. And so they, got Gene and I together on a call. And like I said, Gene is a charming, very brilliant person, and I was sold almost immediately. Like, man, this guy really knows his stuff. You don't run into a leader of a corporation or a company that is that technically savvy and that down into the level of detail Gene is. That's very rare.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. He knows his tech backwards and forwards. So I remember the first time I heard about proof of space and time. I was intrigued. It was completely new, novel, and it was getting away from the high energy mining concept of Ethereum, GPUs, and ASICs with Bitcoin. What was your first impression when you first heard of Post? Like, did it
Yeah,
knock your
so
socks off?
the thing that stuck out for me was the Time Lord component. I I noted the space-driven portion of consensus, which seemed like rainbow tables, right? From a security perspective, what a Chia plot is in the end is just a bunch of cryptographic data pre-written to disk, which I mean that's what a rainbow table is. So that is a concept that's pretty well trod in security circles. The part that really grabbed me was the addition of a verify delay function and the new math that goes into proving cryptographically that time has passed. I think that a lot of the green energy, low power, use your recycled resources messaging is really strong in the community. I think that stuff is awesome, but I think that the fact that they invented a new thing with numbers is like the way cooler part of this blockchain. And I get that not everybody's a math wonk. But to me, that's the part that I was like, this is different. Like, can you talk to me about what Time Lords do? Walk me through how they exist in the network. What is preventing someone from finding it and attacking it? What if I Sybil attack it, right? Like I remember for like a half hour I just was rattling off like rapid fire questions at Gene about the things that were just like immediately stream of conscious coming to mind as he was explaining Time Lords to me. And every answer I was like, you guys have thought of that too? Like uh how airtight that protocol is and how well that functions it still blows me away. And when we turned on the ASICs and it didn't break anything, right? Like I always expect the worst, and then I'm pleasantly surprised that things are, hey, it's probably pretty okay.
So I think many people who are even into Chia and farming Chia might not fully understand this concept of Time Lords and VDF. So if you're going to really simplify things, like explain it to a fifth grader, what would you tell that fifth grader what a Time Lord is and why it's important?
Yeah, so if we're starting with a fifth grader who knows like what blockchains are, if you understand what proof of work is, and this is very simplified, but proof of work is there's a bingo caller and they're saying, I'm thinking of a number. First person to answer me with the right number and prove it mathematically, you win. That is still basically how Chia works. There's a number that's being generated. You're asking everybody in the room that's playing bingo with you. First person to give me the number back wins. The thing that Time Lords do that is unique is that they give a range of time that has to have passed for you to have given the data back. And so you cannot cheat and pre-generate answers. You've done some of the work already, and that's on disk. But it allows us to create a window where you only have 20 seconds, and we know that if you answer before or after, you're probably doing something shady, and so we're going to throw your answer out. On top of that, it makes this the world's best clock. We are cryptographically proving every time the blockchain moves forward that time has passed, which is incredible. It's really like has never been done before. And the weight chain, the proof chain that we have is also a proof that time passed chain, which is amazing. The applications for that are super great. You can do things like, hey, we want to lock up the preform for 90 days. You can do things like, you can't spend this coin till next Friday when you're actually getting paid. That kind of stuff doesn't exist in other ecosystems, and it frankly can't because they don't have a good enough clock. The only clock that's better is likely one that's theoretical, like a neutron-based atomic clock, right? Where you're like bouncing a neutron back and forth between two stars or something. Otherwise, this is the best clock humans have ever made.
Wow, very cool. And so what's the importance then of like the speed of a Time Lord? Like a faster ASIC Time Lord, why is that important?
So the way that the time chain works is when you answer the number the bingo caller has, you are saying, here is my proof that my answer that is closest to 1 or closest to your number is the heaviest, is the best mathematical answer to this that required the most compute. And what the Time Lord is doing when you pass it that solution is it is running an instantaneous proof of time against your proof to see if they are the same. And then it will take and ask you, hey, okay, so it seems like yes, you have answered this, and we'll go back to your farm and then your farm will do a full weight proof, which will then send to the Time Lord, and it will validate it again. What the Time Lord is also doing is it's injecting the blocks. So once it is established like, yes, this is legit. You are the heaviest, you win. It then puts that block into the chain and then, rolls the bingo ball thing and calls another number.
Okay.
And all of that is happening very, very quickly. And so if you can process that math the fastest, then you get to say, hey, this is true or false. That's great if everybody's honest. If someone is doing it faster and they are dishonest, they can say, oh, hey, Brian, maybe you actually won that last one, right? That you had the heavier weight proof, and they can inject a false block that makes a not heavier chain. And so the way we work around that is that we run super fast Time Lords, and so we ensure that if you are trying to be dishonest, there is another very fast Time Lord that is going to be honest to produce a heavier chain that will win out eventually. There'll be a fork and the heavier chain will win. We also if you go and look at the majority attack page that's been kind of passed around all week, it explains that there's a math equation there where there's a certain amount of space you have to have that's dishonest, along with a certain number of dishonest Time Lords, because only one will almost always lose out to the honest guys. And it may take, a couple blocks for the weight to shift and for it to fork, but the consensus is designed in a way that it will self-heal. And so an honest fast Time Lord will, eventually rebuild the chain. The risks come when a single Time Lord can be very much faster, like 70% faster. That's very bad. A few percent faster, not the end of the world. In fact, most Time Lords that run before we had the ASICs, were just random computers around the world that were running Time Lords, and who was fastest would bounce around pretty frequently. After we turned the ASICs on, we kind of were the ones that were infusing blocks most of the time. Although it's really great to see the testing that Brant's been doing this week, a single unit, not a cluster. If you're geographically closer to the proof, you usually infuse the block, which is great. That means that it'll be a truly geo-distributed consensus, as opposed to these ones that we run that are well peered always being the fastest.
Interesting. So is that part of the distribution plan then, with all the ASIC Time Lords, to make sure globally they're pretty evened out? Okay.
Yeah, our goal was to get them on every continent if we could. We didn't have applicants from every continent, unfortunately, but we got, I think, a pretty decent amount of coverage. And we also looked to get them distributed, in physical space around the globe, so that the foibles of like under ocean cables and things like that became less of a concern for the network. One of the things that these Time Lords will do once they're distributed to the world is that they will allow for network segmentation to not cause as much interruption in the chain. Right now, say the Chinese farmer block gets separated from the global internet for 10 minutes or something like that. That's going to be something that requires some healing in the chain. We're hoping that having closer Time Lords to them will mean that the heavier chain will always progress. That sort of stuff, right? Like people in Australia, we don't want them losing out because kangaroos ate through the wire under the ocean or something.
So are we talking about theoretical future attacks that could happen, or has stuff like this already happened where a bad actor is trying to form a bad block?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen what I would call a malicious fork. I think that there were, especially early in the life of the chain when NetSpace was still pretty growing exponentially, I think that there were a lot of different opinions about what the heaviest chain was, and there were some splits. And we've also gone through periods when there's like high congestion, some weirdness with splits in the chain, and then sometimes around forks that we put out have caused some disagreement in the weight of the chain. I don't think any of that stuff was malicious, but it does show that a properly motivated, properly funded actor could force one of these things that were kind of hiccups before and unintentional, and create larger concerns, which is why we are we're really trying to be on top of bugs and patch them. All the most recent security bugs that we kind of patched last year and then told you guys about in the spring of this year, just to avoid people exploiting them. Those were kind of like scary things that we had found, but it was like really encouraging. We were able to find them, identify the concerns that those changes had brought out on, as an example, testnet 10, may it rest in peace. That poor testnet was tortured by the things that we are afraid of happening to mainnet. And so it was great to have an ecosystem to test it in. It was great to be able to get the changes out and get patched and then be able to tell everybody about it. And I think that's like a really good signal about the stewardship that CNI can have for the blockchain project as a whole, where it was like collaboration between us and the community to say like, here's some security patches, we should probably all take them, and then the culture of being honest and open and having these public postmortems all the time, I think helped people accept that we had everybody's best interest in heart with the kind of having to be effusive like we were with a couple of these security updates.
Okay. Yeah, the biggest thing I remember during my Chia farming was the disruption caused by the dust storms that were getting kicked up. And we always try to speculate like who and why would they want to do that? And it was stress testing the network, and the network made it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see this pretty much in every blockchain project, right? Like if someone can send things, they will. And there are environments that have been configured that low fees or no fees are like the du jour practice. I think that leads to a permanent dust storm. There was a lot of pain in the community. We heard you guys, like it really did kind of suck to have to wait for the mempool and pay a fee, even though it was somebody just dusting. However, I think that, the things have always said from the beginning, that a fee market will prove out. It will eventually become really expensive to do this. All of that stuff kind of worked out the way we said it would. And so, yeah, I mean, not ideal, right? But I think those are the growing pains blockchains will go through. And when I see it happening in other ecosystems now, I'm like, yeah, that really does suck. Like 100%, I know the pain you guys are having. And, I think that's one of the things that will make the best tech win in this space is that we're all going to go through those same trials by fire.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So let me look at my checklist here. All right. What would you say are the top 3 things that you spend your time on while working for CNI?
I mean, right now it's Time Lords, and Time Lords. Monday that will go back to my regularly scheduled programming. So the red teaming stuff we do, the phishing, the attacking our own infrastructure, the validating our assumptions about what happens when things are broken, or if some malicious actor executes some wild script somewhere, and then like tabletop exercises. That's about a third of my time. Another third of my time is spent interacting with the guy who runs our bug bounty program and making sure that we're on top of security patches, understanding reports as they come in for the protocol, as well as for our general just IT infrastructure space, and evaluating is this a real report, is it not, taking action to mitigate if it was a real report. That's probably another third of my time. And then the other third is code reviews, maintenance, keeping up with my team, keeping on top of just being a leader here at Chia and making sure that I understand what's going to be the next release, and doing this kind of community outreach stuff, that sort of thing.
Very cool. So the first thing that you talked about, are you spending your time on the test nets, like throwing things at that, trying to break it,
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, it really depends on what the concern is at the time, right? Like last summer, a lot of our concerns were around these chain forks and around mitigating the results of maybe malicious behavior, maybe not. So yes, then I was very focused on that. Usually that, it's the crisis of the day will draw most of my attention. Not to say that, crisis ops is our way of doing business, but just, the things that are very important will rise to the top. And those are the things that I end up spending a lot of my security hours on is this an existential risk to the chain? Is it an existential risk to the farmers that are going to be running it? I'm a farmer myself, so securing farms is near and dear to my heart. And then honestly, the main thrust of my security work is securing the team, making sure that we are tabletopping exercises, making sure that we are working through scenarios, making sure that we are testing our own security practices, keeping an eye out for people that are testing our security practices, or maybe actually trying to do malicious things, and closing those loopholes. Playing defense is very hard. There's all the offenders get infinite swings. We only have to be wrong once, and so those are the things really that I spend the majority of my time on, is focusing on mitigating risk, I find that if you assume compromise, like you assume that someone's going to make a mistake because we're humans, and mitigate the damage they can do, and then always validate those assumptions over and over and over again, you might be able to, sleep restfully 2 or 3 hours a night.
Yeah, you got to stay on top of this stuff. There's so many moving parts. And this may be a good segue then into the next topic of no SSD. So as far as no SSD, we've all talked a lot about it on Discord and watched them as their net space has grown. The big overarching question is an entity like no SSD, do you view them as a security risk to the blockchain?
I mean, at a certain point, maybe, but I don't think that they have ever gotten anywhere near that. I will say that the community has an opinion of them, which I think is fair. They behaved evasively and kind of came out hot when they came on the scene. I don't know that we did any favors there because our official response was a little slow, and we have since, I think, built a much stronger relationship with them. And so I think that, knowing what I know now, I don't think that they were ever intentionally malicious or ever intended to do anything untoward. I do think that there's some stuff that they've decided to do which I would not have done, like add an auto update feature. That sort of stuff is, I think, questionable choices, but that's their business. I will say that there is a world where a product like no SSD can become a risk. I don't believe that there is they were ever near that much consensus, and the consensus plus a bunch of Time Lords is what they really would have needed to be an actual threat. And so even if they got one of these ASICs, right, like I could send them one right now with their current net space and it could triple, and I don't think that they would actually be able to attack the chain and do some kind of chain forking nonsense or games. I will say that I'm excited to see that people are like worried about that sort of stuff. I think that when a lot of ecosystems, they worry about it far too late and the horse is already out of the barn by the time they're like, hey, wait a minute, we're not decentralized anymore. It's really nice to see people concerned about the Nakamoto consensus impacts, which I think were the biggest ones. And it's really nice to see people concerned about a player in the space that is closed source and a little more evasive than people are used to. I think in crypto in general, their practice and process is not strange. I think that we are sort of unique here in Chia, that we have a lot of people who like really internalize the values of decentralization and of democratization of consensus. Because that's kind of the pitch, right? Like, why wouldn't you just go buy a million ASICs and run Bitcoin if that kind of consensus works for you? And so I think that we're very sensitive to that, which is great. But I don't actually think that a lot of the hype around their danger was really much, was probably much to nothing to borrow from the Bard. But I will say that the auto update thing makes me nervous still. I know you run their stuff, but it seems like as long as you take precautions, like it's, you can kind of mitigate the risks. So, I get why people do it, right? Like profits are what drive mining or farming, and it's very profitable to have an advantage of that kind of, space multiplication.
Yeah, I mean that's why I did get into no SSD, because at that time they had the most efficient compression. So it was the most profitable as a farmer to go that direction. And there was a lot of open discussion about this is a known risk. If they've got auto update and it's closed source, you got to be ready for something bad to happen on your network, possibly. So
Yeah.
Now you said that they never got anywhere close. They made it to what, a third of net space, roughly. What percentage would they need for, if they were a bad actor, what percentage would a bad actor need net space wise?
That is a number that is constantly moving. It is dependent on what net space exists, that is honest versus not dishonest, the number of Time Lords that you are able to contribute. The majority attack equation is, I mean, it's on the article that Dan posted, but it's essentially your dishonest space divided by 1 times dishonest space, and then that in parentheses times 100. So that's basically saying like the total net space, the factor of space you control versus the total net space times the number of Time Lords you can get for multiplicative advantage is your basically like threat coefficient. And the numbers are astronomical. It's like with 1 Time Lord, you need like 70% of space or something like that. And I don't know if that's accurate. That's the accurate number, but it is something that high. And the like the logarithmic growth they had was like what everybody was very concerned about. But that's like the rule of large numbers. Like people don't understand just how much space they still had to go, and it was still growing outside of their growth, right? So like,
Right.
if it was like a sliding scale, their scale is going like this, but then the scale was also expanding this way. Um, it looked worse than it was. By the numbers, it wasn't, it was like, yeah, I mean, sure they could, but we really seriously doubt that there's, things would have to change economics wise globally for that to have been a concern.
Okay. And we don't have to get into the nitty-gritty math at all, but just, higher level stuff. If a large actor like no SSD were able to acquire, let's say 5 Time Lords, basic Time Lords, does that make it more of
Yeah,
a
I mean,
risk factor?
it's still like close to 70%, 80% of that space would have to be malicious to. I think it's like 100 Time Lords is what you need to gain advantage enough to 51% attack the chain, which
Okay.
is, then you need, what is it, 17 exabytes or 16 or 15? I'm not sure what the net space is today, but it's something incredibly high. If you use GPU scaling factor, let's say you can rental attack and buy, every GPU NVIDIA makes for the next 3 years, you may be able to generate enough space with 100 Time Lords.
Okay.
I think we would probably notice if every NVIDIA GPU on Earth was being sold to one person. Um, I think that the thing that makes rental attacks scary for me is that there is currently a big boom in LLM training, and a lot of cards are being made to train LLMs very efficiently, which just so happens to make them pretty good at attacking our consensus if you were so inclined. It's one of the reasons that the new platform was suggested, is that we feel comfortable where we're at and we feel comfortable with the trajectory we're on versus technology. However, there are risks in the system that we cannot control, one of them being how long the LLM boom lasts. And if anybody here is old enough to have been around in 1998, the internet used to be like LLMs are now. And then everybody lost their job, and it happened overnight. And that sort of thing kind of happens in tech. And so that's the thing that we are very concerned about, which is why we're trying to get ahead of it with the platform app. Because if every GPU on Earth suddenly went idle tomorrow, the incentives maybe are point that CPU power at, attacking our consensus or doing other crazy things that we would rather not have to deal with.
Okay. Yeah, good. You got ahead of my next question, so that makes sense. So the new platform app is not so much to remedy, for example, the Nakamoto coefficient or no
I mean,
SSD
obviously, we
space.
we love a high Nakamoto coefficient, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that even at 7 or 8, we were still 4 times Bitcoin. But we want a higher one. Obviously, we aspire to one in the hundreds, and so obviously that's a benefit of the hard fork. Like ideologically, though, we would not have suggested a hard fork just to heal the Nakamoto coefficient. We don't believe that the disruption to the network is worth bringing that idea along if nobody else agrees with it. We do feel that it is important to keep the consensus solid, and so that's why we were like, all right, it's time to pull the trigger on this. And really, that was Bram. He sat down and finally came out of his poker on Chia chain thing and
Yeah.
looked at some details and was like, oh, hey, wait a minute, that's setting off my spider sense. And then a week later, Bram was back and he's like, yeah, we got a fork. I figured some stuff out. So, it's great to see Bram's mind on these kind of problems. Yeah, that's just kind of what shakes out when you have, geniuses like Bram working on stuff. He'll go away and come back and suddenly it's like, Eureka,
That's great. Okay, let's see here. So as far as high level blockchain security for Post, what is the biggest existential risk to Post blockchain security?
Rental attacks right now. I think that's like the single thing that keeps me awake at night, that I will wake up tomorrow and LLMs cause cancer and nobody's doing them anymore. And now there's a trillion GPUs just sitting around looking for, something to do.
Yeah.
That frightens me a lot. The other things that like we don't have much control over global network segmentation. A world war would probably be real bad. Although we do have one of the only war zone proof consensus. We have nodes in a lot of places that are currently fighting wars that are, still up and running.
Wow.
Hate to see farmers in that kind of situation, right? Like we're not like excited about that, but it is nice to see that, consensus doesn't go down even if power is spotty and that sort of thing in your country. Global network segmentation, the Great Firewall concerns me a lot. I think that we have a lot of Chinese farmers and their government having control over how those nodes connect to the global internet, always going to be a security concern, although it seems like, this consensus is kind of okay. It doesn't seem to spark the same alarms that proof of work or other consensus do, with the people who run the global peering points for China. And then I would say that, the other thing that's like probably not possible is someone investing, hundreds of millions of dollars in a way faster ASIC and then using that to do a, reentrancy attack, building a chain that's heavier silently and suddenly slipping it in, and there's a fork that's, an epoch long that they have slid in with a bunch of malicious transactions in it. That's likely not possible, but that's like the thing that like, oh, what if it happens someday? Although, like a lot of things have to go wrong for a long time for that to even be possible. It's just, my mind always goes to the worst possible scenario.
Sure. That's good for your job title. Get ready for the worst. All right. You already answered the rental attack question. And then, okay, what is your role in particular in protecting the pre-farm?
Yeah. So, a while ago, my role was very critical in protecting the pre-farm because I built all the custody boxes and distributed them and got everybody set out that has the keying materials and helped them key it and put them in the locations that they're in, and teach them how to use it. We also, me and Gene and Chris on my team, worked together on locking the coins from the initial custody puzzle into the custody puzzle they're in now. At this point, really, I'm part of the control structure of like, yes, we're allowed to spend this. Yes, this is the spend button we intend to spend. Validation that we do every time we send stuff from the pre-farm. I know we're like this big whiz bang rocket ship tech company, but at the end of the day, our financial controls are very like old and solid because like you have to. And so every time we move something from the pre-farm, we do the multi-sig thing. Chris puts the spend bundles together, interacts with the signatories, gets the stuff back together. And then we do a final review of like, yes, this makes sense. This is what we intend to spend. These are the people that we intend to sign it. And then we publish it on chain. Chris does that portion. And so it's kind of like this dual layer control thing where, we both have keys that we plug into to launch the metaphorical nuclear bomb. We are working on improving that. Like we're always looking to like dog food our own improvements and put that into this workflow. Like if we're not willing to use it, who will be? I'm really, really excited for the SecP signer stuff, and for like the iPhone signer stuff. I think that we had a revision 2 second generation signer box in mind that was kind of using like this tech here. This is like that like seed signer thing with the camera on it. We thought about doing this. I put together a proof concept, but then we were so far into the SecP stuff that it was like, well, maybe we'll just do that instead. And so probably the next generation of these is like an iPhone in a locked box in the places that we keep them. And way simpler for the end user. Right now it's a little funky.
Yeah.
You got like to use like grocery store scanners, and we're like sending codes around like secret squirrel with like messenger pigeon and stuff.
Are you guys also using the clawback feature when you're doing those spends?
Yeah. So for the bigger ones, the smaller ones we do a basically the way the signature custody works is it doesn't finalize for a certain period of time. We can claw it back. Let me think. The most recent ones we've done were all on that. The first couple we did were like more traditional clawback. These are like it'll be valid after a period of time transactions. So we could technically still clawback, but it's like different. It's like a different puzzle for the descent, basically, but it's essentially the same functionality.
Okay. All right. What is your personal most exciting, scary, or adrenaline-filled moment to date on Chia's blockchain?
I mean, moving the preform is pretty scary. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. Like that's a lot of coins. Um, and no one had ever really done it before. Like we did a lot of practice. We did a lot of test nets. Still, it was like what could possibly go wrong. Unlocking the preform that first time after we had locked it away for so long was a little hair raising. And then yeah, I mean, and then other than that, like launch day when we released version 1 and mainnet started and the preform generated and it sent to the right address, um, that was like I don't know, like when my kids were being born, like that's how nervous I was. Because it was like just, I mean, we've tested this a trillion times, and Mariano's a genius, and all these things we know that they should go right, but that never stopped me from being a worrywart, knowing things are going to be okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like how does that work? Is it the same as a regular chia farmer where you put your stuff in cold storage and it hasn't seen the light of day, and then you got to input your 24 words?
It was a little more complicated than that. We had a couple devices that got used for that work that were then sealed, put away, and sent via horseback to different parts of the kingdom. We had we had a custody in America, custody outside of America, basically pants and suspenders so we could get back into the preform keys. Those boxes had never been on the internet. They were specially configured so that they could be always encrypted at rest, and you couldn't take swings at the unencryption password. So basically like a couple falses and it's locked forever. um a lot of work and time went into like securing that stuff before we had custody, because the like with you guys, if you have a paper key or a metal key or a key that is accessible and can be copied, that was a lot of coins that could have been stolen. And so we wanted to make extra triple sure that all the things we were doing made it impossible to do that. And actually, we did it so good that the first try on the custody stuff in America, I had some issues and we had to move over to the backup custody stuff, and that stuff worked like a charm. But it just goes to show, like being a Boy Scout, like that's why, right? Like one is none, one is one, two is one is none. If you only have one, you're asking for trouble.
Man, that must have been scary when the one in America didn't work.
I mean, it was working, but we were having some issues with it, and it was just like we weren't sure if it was like hardware bugs or what, and so we were able to use the one from Europe, and it was it worked first try, and we were like, all right, that's great. I feel much better now.
Wow.
There were a couple of days there it was like very, very stressful. We were like, all right, so like what do we do? What happens if we can't get into this guy? But it worked out in the end, and that was exciting time for sure. It was
All right, let's see. What would you say are the main differences that Chia differs from, as far as security goes? Chia's blockchain security differs from Bitcoin's or Ethereum's.
so aside from consensus, right? Like I think that there are like clear differentiators in the design of our consensus versus the design of both Bitcoin and Ethereum's consensus at this point. I think in particular, Ethereum's consensus is particularly centralizing. And I know Ethereum maxis are going to come and like yell at me on Twitter about this later, but like the fact that their reward is also their consensus, and that slashing exists, and that there's like two like pools that exist that run all of consensus, to me is a big risk for Ethereum security in general. And I know that they're like, hey, social forking is a thing, and Vitalik said it'll be fine. Very well designed chain. I just don't think that proof of stake is it. And I think that when the chips are down, the worst in humanity comes out, and things like slashing create cartels, things like centralized consensus where you can slash your competition create cartels, and all of those are very dangerous. And I don't see a way to break the security of the chain away from those ecosystem kind of table stakes that they've created now. And on the other side with Bitcoin, their consensus is pretty centralized too, because of the way that mining pools work for them. I think that again, Bitcoin maxis will probably come yell at me about this on Twitter, but I think that a centralizing pool infrastructure is very dangerous. I like my voting blocks big and varied and making their own blocks and not censorable. And Bitcoin has like two of those. You have to convince one guy with a wrench that you're taking this reentrancy heavier chain because you've got his kids or something, and it's very hard for Bitcoin to break away from that. All that being said, the Nakamoto coefficient differences, because ours is kind of down too. I think that Bitcoin's security is really strong, like their node protocol is really strong. I think that they, have been around the longest and understand things like how to scale a giant database and how to, be responsible stewards of the software. I also think that some of the advantages those ecosystems have that we don't is they probably have more myriad developers producing node software and miner software and all that kind of stuff. There's fewer players in our ecosystem, which I would like to see more of. Everybody was upset about no SSD. I thought it was great because it's like a competitor, right? Like ecosystem gets better when more people participate in it. And I think that's something that both those ecosystems have in spades that we do not, and something we can really do better and we're working on. And then, there's a lot of things that our node protocol does that are just improvements that I think, there are clients in those ecosystems that do, but maybe not the main one. Like the Sybil resistance we have, where basically, a Sybil attack is when you basically surround a node and say like, hey, we're the internet. You can talk to us, buddy. It's fine. And then you feed it malicious data. The reason that isn't an effective attack on Chia, and it might be on other types of nodes, is that all you need is one honest node to reach and talk to the node. And because of the way our consensus works, we're always sharing peer information. And so your Sybil attack that would cost lots of money will be invalidated when eventually that one node gets through and talks to it, and then it starts using the real chain again. The other thing that we have that makes our consensus stronger and more secure, I think, is that you can run it on like really any hardware. Up to, that has moved forward a little bit, but we are really, really conscious of low-end hardware being our bread and butter and like something we really value keeping on chain, as opposed to an ecosystem like Ethereum, which is really proof of AWS at this point. Like Ethereum nodes are very expensive and they run in like basically one or two cloud providers. And I think that's also very dangerous for your consensus, because if AWS wakes up one day and says, hey, the government said we can't do crypto mining anymore, boom, and there goes your everything.
That's like the same with Solana too, right?
Yep.
The same issue. Okay, interesting. So you talked about you're working with your team at Chia. How many people are on your team working on security issues?
We have there's myself and Bram and Patrick. Patrick is sort of DevOps, also security. So there's three of us that work full-time in security, and then the rest of my team is three other people. And so we're seven of us, and we're DevOps, so like everybody contributes code, everybody contributes ideas. We're very open and discuss everything. I try really hard to lead from the front of a group of peers. That's so like when we have a discussion about like, oh, how are we securing our CI runners, I'd love everybody on my team's input of like, hey, I'm worried about this thing, or this is why that's not a concern. I just find that that's even if people aren't like in security, they have really good opinions and expert level experience, and so why not have them contribute?
Are all these discussions happening on GitHub, or is this behind the scenes?
Oh, we're in Keybase. Like a lot of the stuff my team does is in our Keybase team.
Okay. All right. Well, let's change topics a little bit here. What do you like to do, Justin, when you're not defending the security of the blockchain? What's your hobbies?
I'm a gamer. I mean, I used to be. I don't know how much of a gamer I am anymore. I'm mostly a dad. I spend a lot of my time raising children. I play lacrosse on the weekends. I'm a huge lacrosse player. I played as a kid and then got back into it as an adult because I needed to exercise. And it's nice to run around and hit people with sticks on weekends. I'm a tinkerer, right? Like I have my own home lab, so I'm always installing or messing with stuff on there. I enjoy additive and reductive manufacturing, so 3D printing and CNC milling I think are fun.
Cool.
I'm a gardener. And, I try to do a lot of things, and that probably leads to me doing less of things than I would actually want to do.
Cool. Jack of all trades. And where's your favorite place to travel?
Oh man, so I'm gonna give you two answers. One of them is Appalachia. I'm a mountain boy. I grew up in Eastern Tennessee and Central PA in the mountains. I think that there's just something special about the Appalachians in particular, like Southeast Tennessee, Northwest-ish North Carolina, Southwest-ish North Carolina area. I think that's like one of the most beautiful places in this country. Nothing quite beats like early morning watching the steam come up off the Smokies. Um, there's not a whole lot to do there. It's a little bit slower pace of play there, but it is nice to visit every once in a while. The more exciting places to visit, I would say I really like London. I'm a huge fan of England. I think the English people are like, they get a bad rap. I think they're like really super friendly people. You just kind of had to know how to interact with them because they're a little weird, but don't force them to be your friend, but like, gently coax them into it and they're about it,
I would have pegged you for more of a Rockies mountain guy than
I mean,
the
that's where I live every day,
Appalachians.
right? So it's not really vacationing, just going outside.
All right. Well, I did get a few community questions too. It was posted on Discord. Let's go through those. Slowest Time Lord asked a few. One is, what is the dollar amount security budget of Chia, and how does it compare with Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Okay. So do you mean like are the Chia Network Inc. the company or like the blockchain?
Let's see if
So
he.
like to attack the consensus, if you're talking about that, with what is the dollar amount to attack the consensus, I'm frankly not sure. It is a very large number. It is being able to generate in some way 17 to 20 exabytes of space, either via GPUs plus a little bit of space, or having a bunch of spinning Rust somewhere, and then having 100 Time Lords. I will not even have 100 Time Lords when we're done with this project of distributing the community. So I don't know that that's even feasible. I think that it is probably more expensive to 51% attack Bitcoin, like brute force attack Bitcoin. I would say in practicality, because of Nakamoto coefficient, it's likely not as expensive to 51% attack Bitcoin because wrenches are $5. If you're talking about like what we spend on security internally, that's a rolling budget. We are very practical about security. Like if I go to our CFO and CEO and COO and I'm like, listen, we have to spend a bunch of money to fix a problem, I have never been like, oh, that's too much money. We are very dedicated to protecting, the blockchain and the node and people internally here. We probably spend, I don't know, 30, 40 grand a month minimum on security tools and scanning and, security testing, phishing, that sort of thing. Like really varies on like what month it is. Some months it's much, much more because it's scan time and we have a bunch of apparatus we need to run and server time we need and that sort of thing. But baseline like 30, 40K a month minimum, probably.
Okay. Another question just popped in along the same lines. How many full-time employees are there at CNI?
60-ish. I don't know the exact count, to be honest with you. We just hired a couple new people.
Okay.
But it's something around there.
About 60, all right. And then back to Slowest Time Lord's second question then. Does CNI offer Chia Lisp auditing as a paid service? And if not, are there
we do
others that
not.
do? Okay.
We do not, and so that's a great question. There are some people in the community who have actually reached out to me specifically about doing that as a cottage industry, and I was like, yes, like please. So the people that I've talked to about that, who you are. Absolutely, please. Like, if you're still interested, like, happy to help in any way that I can. I think that we have traditionally shied away from this because we do not want to be the arbiter of legit in the ecosystem. We have done things like audited the bridge and other like community projects of interest, done audits for them, kind of as a favor to the ecosystem. We did not charge them. Happy to do it as we can. I was always the offer from like way back in the day. If you have a project and you are looking for like a sanity check of your architecture and like just a quick review of like what you've got going on, happy to do that with you as well. We don't charge for that because we don't want to create this perception that we are the only people that can do that. The ideal outcome for us is that there are some blessed entities out there that are like, hey, we're the guys that do this. And the auditors we work with, the ones that are like super duper pricey, that are like 150K, 250K an audit. I think those are your best bet for like professional audits at this point. But even they To be frank with you, like some cryptocurrency concepts are just foreign to them, and so stuff takes longer. They eventually get it and they're able to do it, but it is definitely not like an apples to apples thing for the traditional kind of audits they're doing.
Here's a question from Triv on Discord. With enterprise and banking customers, how in depth do they go looking at the security of Chia's blockchain versus Ethereum or Bitcoins?
Yeah, I mean, as in depth as they can, right? Like, I think that there's this perception that like banking in particular and finance are kind of babes in the woods where it comes to crypto, and I do not think that is true. I think that the people we've worked with there internally, especially the technology champions that we have on the inside of those teams, are very knowledgeable. They understand the stakes of the systems. They understand the differences in consensus. They understand why a high Nakamoto coefficient, for example, is important, and they also understand things like solidity reentrancy bugs are really, really expensive. And so that's why you see like people have played around with the idea of doing internal blockchains. They've done private Ethereum. I know that Jamie Dimon and them are doing some stuff with internal blockchain, maybe their own kind of consensus or whatever. I think that's the reason that has taken that shape, is because they appreciate the technology, they understand that it is useful, but they do not trust that the ecosystems are sufficiently decentralized. And so I think that's going to be the big thing for them if they are going to, the vice president somewhere at a bank that like signs his career up to be like, I'm the blockchain guy, has to be confident that he's not going to get himself fired next week when the consensus drops to zero and it's actually centralized. Gotcha, we still have your money. I don't think that they've seen maturity enough yet in projects that they have worked with outside of us. And so, that's the job we have here, is getting over that, like almost all the news that they've ever gotten is negative. Gene loves to tell stories about he's in the room with people and they're talking about, this and this, and this is never possible. And then he like pops up a demo and shows them like, here's a peer-to-peer offer. And then they're like, it falls into place for them then that like, no, this is not nonsense. Like this is working right now and it's different and it's better.
Yeah, that is really cool about Chia. Triv follows up with the next question. Do you expect Chia to partner with large enterprise customers like money-centered banks in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that that's a direction we will go for sure, right? Like obviously if there is a bank out there we want to tokenize assets. Yes, absolutely. That is something we are very interested in and probably would be willing to, put financial skin in the game from our end to make a reality. We right now have some strong strategic opportunities in the pipeline that we're looking at, that we're talking about, novel solutions to business problems. One of the things that we are really focusing on marketing wise is that we are a blockchain software company. We are not a crypto company, right? So we're here to solve business problems with this novel blockchain technology. And we happen to be, one of the things we make is a blockchain that pays people in crypto coins. I think that like marketing pitch kind of resonates with the kind of people we're looking to do deals with. And it is right now waiting for those to reach a point of maturity where it makes sense for, financial partnership to take place. I think the key stumbling blocks right now are custody, like the SecP wallet is going to be huge. The bridge for liquidity is going to be huge. I think that the next 3-4 months, maybe up to 6 months, are going to have like real big building blocks fall into place. And then we will, in my opinion, have the table stakes for those larger financial institution partnerships. The initial stuff we were doing with other, major banks and stuff, those projects were very fruitful. But it comes back to these probably like 2 or 3 questions of like, when is X going to work? When is Y going to work? Those are the things that they need. And once those are ready, I think that there will be a lot more momentum in those kind of partnerships.
Nice. Yeah, the roadmap for this year looks really exciting with some of these big pieces coming in. The bridge especially. All right. Andrew Davidson asks, if an exchange wants to list XCH, what are the best places or people to contact to understand Chia custody?
Yeah, I mean, so you can reach out to us on Discord. You can also reach out to us at hello@ or info@chia.net. We also, we're on offense there. We're reaching out to exchanges. We're talking to them. We have, our community people are actively interfacing with all comers who want to talk to them about, working with Chia custody and the paradigms. You can also reach out to me directly, justin@chia.net, if you're, out there and you work for an exchange, and somehow we haven't been in contact with you. We are all aboard providing any resources that exchanges might need. We have people that are actively working with exchanges behind the scenes basically all the time. And so, we let us know what you need. We are happy to lean in and help build paradigms, understand patterns, help you understand where ERC20 and Bitcoin might be different from Chia and CATS. And so, yeah, does that answer your question? I don't know. I feel like maybe I wandered a little bit.
No, I think that was exactly what
Okay.
he was looking for right there. All right, some more questions just came in live during our talk here. Were the Chia Time Lords shipped in Chia themed boxes?
I showed the box. I can show it again. Let me find one with an actual Time Lord in it. Give me a second. Oh, falling off my chair. All right, so here's the box they come in. The only Chia branding on them is that they have this cool Chia logo on the end. I'm sorry for all the staticky noise, but they've got that like green like Chia logo on the end, and then they're just a silver box. And
Yeah,
that's
it
the
does look
power.
like a deck of cards.
Yeah, they're very small, and that's the power and the data right there. They're two separate ports, and there's like a status LED that you can see through the case when they're on. But yeah, they're fairly simple. The packaging, like I said, is not super sexy. This is beta hardware. It's probably not what you guys are used to when you're buying stuff off the internet for hardware wise, but we're real OGs here. This was our own like 100-unit taping out and pressing. So there's like stuff like this doesn't happen, right? Like if you are like a tech nerd, like it was like the early days of the internet last time this kind of a thing was like done widespread. So I don't know. I think it's neat.
That is cool. When people are going to get these Time Lords, are they going to get written instructions in there with it?
Yep. So there's a QR code card that comes in the box with a link to the instructions. I believe Brant's working on publishing that stuff today or Monday. So that stuff will be published well before the Time Lords are in people's hands. And then you'll be able to just scan the QR code and go to the instructions and be off and running.
Wow. Are the operators of these Time Lords going to have a special user interface that they're looking at to see it working or see what the heck it's doing?
There will be, we'll call it special. Yeah, there is definitely a user interface. It is a little crunchy, if I'm being frank with you. It is command line software. It is basically like raw interaction with the Time Lord as a device in the computer. And so you're going to install a couple things. You're going to start a Chia node, start the Time Lord, and then start the ASIC software. And then in the logs, you will see, your standard Chia logs, you will see the interactions talking to the ASIC, passing the proofs. There isn't going to be like a fancy GUI or things like that, although we do have the dashboards that we publish, which are using the same standard Time Lords everybody else will be running. So you can get pretty pictures if you want, and we can help you set up, monitoring using like Grafana. Out of the box, it's going to be very bare bones and CLI and logs basically.
Okay. All right. Here comes another question from the community.
Thanks, Lori, saying we're a bit over time here. We could probably take one or two more and then.
Okay. I just don't want to repeat a same question here. Okay,
there was a question in Discord that was like, "What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in my career?"
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So when I worked at hosting, I was just a regular like a platform admin, like a system admin, basically. And I was working on fixing MySQL replication. And so MySQL replication is like super great until it's not, and then it breaks and it's awful and it cannot fix itself. And the way you fix it is that you nuke the subordinate database, and then you take a copy of the main database and you place it back over the subordinate database, and then you basically restart replication. So you're killing one copy and replacing it with a good copy and then starting them talking again. I was working, it was like the middle of the night. It was like the 19th service I had done that day. And when I hit enter, I realized that I had deleted the main database and not the subordinate. And was like, no, stop, please stop, please undo. And it was too late. I had deleted hundreds of gigs of client data that there was no backup of. And so I sat there for a minute, just like, well, I guess I'm fired. I don't know. Like, I don't even know what to do here because this has never happened to me before. And then I ended up calling in and was like, hey, you'll notice a downtime alarm on this client. That's my fault. All their data is gone. I'm gonna go cry now. And so then I like had to go into the office and was there for like 2 whole days. It turns out you can rebuild MySQL databases from the replication logs. It just costs like $10,000 an hour. And so we were able to pay a data recovery specialist to come in, and basically I cost like $180,000 because it took the guy 18 hours or whatever to rebuild the database from replication logs. But that's probably the most expensive and dumbest thing I've ever done in my career. And so when people make mistakes, I'm like, it's all right. You know, there, but by the grace of the spaghetti monster go I.
$180,000 keystroke. Ouch.
Yeah, it was really it was a banner moment for me. And I like you just do something stupid and realize instantly that it was really stupid. That was me that day.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Justin, for joining today and sharing all your knowledge. It was really cool to hear, the hands of the blockchain with you and your team and Gene. It's just really encouraging that you guys are on top of it, know your stuff, and it gives me a lot of confidence as a farmer. Just keep plugging away at it.
Thanks, man. I mean, we wouldn't be here without guys like you and the rest of the community, right? Like we are very gracious and like thankful that you guys are here and willing to spend time going along on this adventure with us. The blockchain is secured via the efforts of my team and the whole Chia team, but also like by you guys, right? It is the consensus is secure because you're willing to run a bunch of hard drives in your house and make your garage super hot and whatever other crazy things you guys do. And so it is a team sport here. There's no like I am not magic or like sitting in this central panopticon tower like making sure everybody's safe. Like we're all doing that together. And so I really appreciate all of you as well.
That's great. Thanks, Justin. All right. Well, enjoy your day, and we'll see y'all on Discord.
Thanks for having me.
All
You guys
right.
have a great day.
All right. Take care. Bye.